Okay, so right now I'm going to go through how to label samples, ranging from DOC samples that you'll be collecting first probably with the water chemistry set, through slides, flow cytometry samples, nutrient samples, particulate organic matter samples, and bacterial metagenome 16S samples with a 0.22 Sterabect. Also, if you take a large metagenome on a given day, we'll also go through how to label viral and bacterial metagenomes taken from the large 60 liters of seawater. Alright, so first of all, this is a DOC sample. It comes in a large wide mouth high density polyethylene HDPE bottle. You'll see that I've labeled it by placing lab tape all the way around it, so it comes back and loops onto itself, so it sticks on there. You don't have to worry about it coming off. When you fill this bottle, you fill it 2/3 full, which is why I've also put the tape about 2/3 of the way up, so that I know once I see water above this label, I'm done. It's a visual cue for me. It works very well. Alright, a consistent naming theme throughout our samples. It goes site, nature of the sample, date, initials, and then the Niskin bottle that it came from. Usually you collect 2 Niskin bottles per site, so usually it's Niskin 1, Niskin 2. Later on, as you go down through the samples you collect, there are some samples we pool across Niskins, so that information is no longer necessary, but usually there's other information. Okay, so here we have the site, which is Palo 6. With NOAA cruises at least, we have a 3-letter island code followed by a 2 or 3 digit site number. So Palo 6 is Palmyra, site 6. DOC, this is a dissolved organic carbon sample. The date, the full date please, 29th of July 2013. Because we have people from different national origins in the lab, we should write out the full date, because 7/3/13 means very different things to people from the United States than it does to people from other areas of the world, even from Canada. So please write out the full date so there's no confusion there at all, no ambiguity. Then my initials, in my case BK, and then Niskin 1. So site, nature of the sample, date, initials of the person who took the sample, and then the Niskin number. Okay. Next we have some slides that we've made, the slides. So here is a slide box. This is where the slides come in. Then what I've done here is I've laid out 2 different slides. Now, I've labeled one of these with a nice fat Sharpie that worked really well on the DOC sample, and also a fine Sharpie. You'll see that the fat Sharpie doesn't really give enough space for us to put all the information in. Like, for example, that's meant to be the date. There's no space otherwise. So usually what I do is I use a fine Sharpie on the slides. Now on this slide you'll see that we've got the consistent and usual, the site, Palo 6, we have a date, we have the person who took the sample, as well as Niskins. Usually when you make a slide, you'll actually take for example, all the cyber filters from a given site, and you'll put them Niskin 1, Niskin 2 on a slide. That way we can put all the cyber slides from a site into one slide box and all the DAPI slides in another. Okay, so this also has information on the size of the filter used, which is a 0.02 micron filter, the stain, in this case cyber, and then what's really important here as well is that you write down the volume that was filtered. Otherwise we don't know what concentration, what the filter represents, right? So on the slide we have site, date, initials, the Niskin number and the volume filtered, Niskin number, volume filtered, pore size, and stain. Okay, and there'll be from the site from Palo 6 there'll be Niskin 1 and Niskin 2 cyber filters on here. Okay, when it comes to flow cytometry samples, we do those using cryovials, which come in a bag like this or whatever bag. Make sure when you look at your cryovial, make sure they unscrew. Okay, if they pop open, that's not the right sample vial to use. That's an EpiTube or something similar, and they often pop open when you drop them into the liquid nitrogen and flash freeze them. So cryovials are screw top, so they're resistant to that popping. Okay, but when we're labeling it, you'll see again we've got the site. I've written flow for flow cytometry samples, then we have a date, my initials, and then the Niskin it came from. Because we do 3 replicates per Niskin for flow cytometry, I've written a 1 here, so it'll be 1, 2, 3. Okay. Next, the nutrient samples. They come in this large tray. They're actually scintillation vials, so 20 ml scintillation vials. Note the cap on these has a plastic insert. You can get them with a metal insert, but we try not to use those. I don't know if they contaminate the sample or not. Okay. When you're handling any of these bottles, try to avoid, first of all, I would be wearing gloves when I'm actually sampling here. Make sure you don't handle any of the interior surfaces of the bottles, okay? You don't want to contaminate them before you've even started. Alright, so again on here we have Palo 6, nutrients this time, the date in full again, so there's no confusion about America versus the rest of the world, my initials, and then Niskin 1. Then you're good to go. Now, particular organic matter samples, such as here, you always find that your filters will come wrapped in aluminum foil in a little envelope. You open the envelope, there are filters in there. Also, the aluminum foil you'll use to wrap your filters comes in a little aluminum envelope as well. What you do is, not using your hands, you pull out a new sheet of aluminum foil, you put your filter in it, you fold it into a little envelope again by folding the sides in, and then top down. And then on the clear surface you'll write the site, POM for particulate organic matter, initials, full date, and the Niskin, but also always write down the volume that was filtered through that filter. Even no matter what it is, even if you are right on the 500 that's required by the protocol, still write it down so we always have a record of how much was filtered through that on the sample itself. Alright, then that goes in the freezer, and it gets stored with this, which is our 16S bacterial metagenome from the water chemistry set. Now that's done using a 0.22 Stereovex, as you can see here. Stereovex looks like this. It looks exactly the same as a 0.45 Stereovex over here. Exactly the same. This one 0.45, this one 0.22. Make sure you use a 0.22 Stereovex when you're doing your water chemistry set, water chemistry work, which is from your Niskin bottles. Alright, after you've put all the remaining water from your water chemistry set per site through one of these Stereovexes, per site again, you want to label it. I write on the actual container, on the packaging here. Again, you've got site, you've got the nature of the sample, in this case bacterial metagenome 16S, my initials, and the date. You don't have to write the Niskin bottle number on here because you pooled across both Niskins. However, always write down the volume that was filtered through them. Right? Usually it's something like 2 liters or something like that. Okay, so that's the labeling for the water chemistry work that you've done out of your Niskin bottles. If you also, in a given day, collected metagenome sample in with the vacuum pump, with the bilge pump, and you collected them in the blue collapsible 5-gallon 20-liter cubies, then what you have to do is at the end of TFF concentrating your 60 liters or so of seawater down, you'll have to filter the concentrate through a 0.45 Stereovex, 0.45, and then you'll collect the liquid that goes through the 0.45 in Falcon tubes and add chloroform. So the way to label these is you once again you write, here we go, you write the site, Palo 6. Now write bacterial fraction of the metagenome, bacterial fraction of the metagenome, my initials, and the date again. But I also write on here the volume that went through. So I've got 60 liters that was concentrated by TFF down to something like 340 mils here, okay? So keep track of the concentration step, how much volume went in, how much it ended up concentrated out, so we know what the sample in here represents. Then on your viral fraction, you once again, you write the date, the site, then viral fraction of the metagenome, then the volume that was concentrated down and what it was concentrated to, the date, my initials, and the fact that I added chloroform, so we can make sure that we handle this sample appropriately. Alright, so that from start to finish on a normal water chemistry day and a viral and a metagenome day, all covered.